All right, hello. My name is Ryan LaFleur, and today I'm going to be talking about fire safety. First off, just introduction. Basically, I'm talking about what I'm about to go over. First, I'm going to start off with some stats about the construction industry and the damage the fire does onto it. And then next, we're going to move into ignition sources. So basically, talk about what's that first spark that makes these fire happen, and then the fuel sources, what keeps the fire going. Then procedures to control the fire and what to do in case of emergencies, and then some OSHA regulations that go along with the fire and construction. So first off, just a couple stats that I found kind of crazy to look at. Between 2013 and 2017, there was an average of 3,840 fires per year on construction buildings or construction buildings underneath construction. And there were 36 deaths per year, and those 36, that's talking about the actual construction workers working on the building. And there was actually also 4 civilian deaths per year, as well as 46 civilian injuries. So not only is this a danger to the construction industry, it's a danger to just the entire public welfare and all pedestrians. Then there's 10% of the fires are caused by arson, so and 33% of property damage was caused by it. So this is basically when fires are created on purpose. So that's why it's very important to have good site security and just always keep an eye out for anything on site. And then also, most fires occur within winter months. I kind of related this to um, basically like heaters, so space heaters inside of a building. Workers are trying to stay warm, and they're probably putting those in spots they probably shouldn't. Next, just talking about the ignition sources, electricity, overloaded circuits. This is the most common as far as I saw. So obviously it can be an arc flash, it can be any type of electricity, but obviously a huge danger to work with here because not only is it a fire hazard, but it's just an electrocution hazard as well. Also, heaters. So I talked about that on the last slide, whether it's electric or gas or oil fired. They put out a lot of heat in a short amount of time, so it can get very, very warm very, very quick. And also, as you can see in this picture on the right, hot work, welding or grinding, it just creates a ton of sparks flying around. So you want to make sure that area is clear of any type of flammable materials. Also, hot surfaces, radiators, or engines. So obviously, there's a ton of construction equipment on site. You want to make sure that they all have the proper time to cool down, and you always want to manage that temperature and keep checking it. And also lighting, halogen lights, hot lights. It's just basically another surface that can get warm, and if it touches something that's flammable, your whole building can go down in a matter of minutes. So something you can never be too careful. Then last, smoker materials, so cigarette matches, lighters. Obviously, a cigarette butt has a spark on the end of it, so you want to keep an eye out for that. Make sure you got a designated spot for it. And then last, like I was talking about, arson. Basically, any type of fire that was intentionally lit and intended to do damage to the construction site. And fuel sources. So once we have that spark, what's next? That's the fuel sources, components of the structure. So any type of wood, as you can see, this uh, residential construction on the right, it can very easily come up to flames if you get a small flame on one of those pieces of woods. Then also flammable liquids, so any type of gas, oil, we all know, we've probably all played with it. It goes up in flames quick, and there's really no controlling that once it starts. Then protective coverings, so basically any type, I look at that as something covering material. A lot of times that can be pretty flammable. Then scaffold sheeting as well, just another type of wood. Usually that wood's pretty old and pretty dried out, so it can go up in flames pretty quick. Then fuel for portable equipment, just like I was talking about with the flammable liquids, gas, oil. Make sure it's in a designated spot. You don't want that just laying around anywhere on the site. Then last is packaging materials. So talking about cardboard, anything that's used to transfer material to the site. A lot of that's flammable, and you want to make sure you got an eye on it. Then control for ignition sources. First, you want to designate an area for smoking. You always want this to be at least 25 feet away from the inside of the building or the perimeter of the building, I should say. You want to make sure it's never done inside and always keep it in that one spot. Also, the use of hot work permits. This allows the superintendent to be aware of any type of hot work that's coming up, and they have the opportunity to go do an inspection on the area, see if anything needs to get moved or cleaned up to limit those ignition sources. Then appropriate use and selection of electrical equipment. This basically comes down to the electrical trade. They got to make sure they're using the right stuff so they don't create those arc flashes and overloaded circuits. And also daily safety checks on all electrical equipment. But I think you could say that the same for the entire site. If you just do a site walkthrough every day, uh, try and identify any hazards and figure out a way to mitigate them. And lastly, a correct placement of fire extinguishers. There's an OSHA standard for how many you need on each floor per square footage, and one always has to be visible. So you want to make sure you're obeying that. And that way, in case a fire does happen, it can be put out before it does more damage than that needs to be. Good housekeeping is also a very good practice for construction managers. You want to install and maintain site fencing. Again, this is huge for security and especially limiting the amount of arson as possible, just to keep those people off site and make sure they don't ever start it. Then you also want to secure flammable materials. So that's talking about gas, oil, put it in a secure location, make sure it's not mobile, and keep it away from any type of ignition sources. Then controlling site entry, again, going back to that site security, talking about arson. Placing warning signs, so you could place this on both electrical equipment, gas, oil, anything that could basically blow up in a way. Make sure everybody's aware of it and make sure they're all aware of that hazard. Designating an area for flammable liquids, and then keeping fire extinguishers in an easily accessible location. You don't want it behind a bunch of materials when, in case of emergency happens, a worker has to go through it all and try and find it. Then some OSHA standards. It was in 1926, subpart F. That's basically all the information it had, and then I read through a couple of the standards, and one that I found pretty interesting was 155-gallon open drum of water with 2 fire pails can be substituted for a fire extinguisher with a 2A rating. I thought that was pretty interesting to know. I never really would have guessed that. I figured fire extinguishers were also always like mandatory, but I guess we learn something new every day. And then in case of emergencies, you want to remain calm. Don't let anybody panic. Don't have the site running all over each other and trying to get out. First, you want to evacuate the job site, and then you should also call 911 as soon as possible, as long as it's not a huge fire in a way. And that leads me to the next point. If possible, use a fire extinguisher to put it out. Here we got a video. As you can see, this video is pretty scary to see. You can see the danger it puts on that construction worker, but also just the civilians around the area. That place is probably going to collapse pretty soon, and it could really wreck a couple blocks vicinity. So this is really eye-opening to see what can actually happen, and to make sure you can never be too careful. So luckily that construction worker was safe, but there you can see the dangers it puts construction workers in, and just knowing that you as a manager has that responsibility of making sure everyone's safe. So, in conclusion, I went over the stats about construction fire and the safety of it, and then went over the ignition and fuel sources, procedures to control the fire, and what to do in case of emergencies. And then I ended with some OSHA regulations and how they're laid out. That's all I have, and thank you.